I don't know how many combinations of offensive lines that have played. We've seen both teams here, both the Jets and the Giants, go through it. And I mean, it's the worst part of offense. I mean, what you want on offense is you want synchronicity. You want to be able to you want to be like the Rockettes. You want to be able to move all in one motion together. And it's like disjointed, and I remember when I played for the Jets back in 1995, and that was Richie Kotite's first year as a head coach. Do you remember when you were growing up and you had the football game that vibrated and guys were going all over the place?
Sure.
That's what we were like. Yeah. We're like, guys were running all over the place. Nobody knew what anybody was doing, and that's why we were so disjointed as an offense. And I would say that's exactly what's going on in the NFL. And I do agree with Tom Brady to some extent. Now, when he played in the AFC East, he owned that division because everybody else stunk.
Yeah.
He went to the NFC South. He owned that division because everybody else stunk.
Yeah.
So I always felt like he had, no games are all easy, but I would always say that he had easier games within his division. So those 6 games that he would have to play in those divisions, he would just own those because the other teams didn't really have quarterbacks that could go up against him. So when I look across the landscape of the NFL, your team lost Kirk Cousins. If he's playing last night, he's putting up 30 points.
Sure.
Joshua Dobbs, nice story. It was great when he didn't know the offense down in Atlanta, and they ended up winning the game. And nobody could believe that they won a game. Now that he has to settle in, now that Tommy DeVito has to settle in, now that Jake Browning has to settle in, now that P.J. Walker has to settle in, these guys are going to find out just how hard it is. Aiden O'Connell, how hard it is to be an NFL quarterback week in and week out and be consistent. You have to learn new defenses, new terminology. You have to figure out a new game plan. The coaches are trying to keep it simple for you, and then ultimately that ends up costing other players on your offensive team their chances at getting their numbers so they get bigger contracts. I mean, there's a lot of crap that's going on that football field. In practice, Tim Boyle can drop back and look like the next coming of, Aaron Rodgers.
Yep.
But then when the game starts, all of a sudden it's like really fast, and you got to make decisions quick. And he's just not ready to do that. He hasn't done it. And, you can't expect him to go out there and throw for 350 yards and 4 touchdowns. When you lose a guy like Joe Burrow, you lose a guy like Kirk Cousins. That's 28 to 30 points a game that we no longer are getting from those teams. And then the other teams that are already struggling, like the Carolina Panthers, like the Pittsburgh Steelers on offense, who finally went over 400 yards. It's not surprising to any of us who cover the league. I mean, there still are top-tier quality teams. I think in the NFC, there's 3 of them. And I would say that's San Francisco, Philadelphia, and Dallas. In the AFC, there's really only 2 of them right now. And that would be Kansas City and Baltimore. I don't know really where Jacksonville is in this pantheon.
Think about that, though. I mean, right there, you just said what the problem was. There's, first of all, the quarterbacks, obviously, and all the injuries. But we have 5 teams in the NFL out of 32 that are any good?
Well, I say top tier. I mean, there are but there are second-tier teams like Detroit, and I think Denver is surging now, which is really, to me, is the story of the second half of the season. The Denver Broncos are 6-5. They've won 5 games in a row. And, this week they're on the road at Houston. And believe it or not, the Broncos and Texans are one of the biggest games of the week this week.
Yeah.
And you're looking at an older quarterback in Russell Wilson versus a younger quarterback in C.J. Stroud. I don't know where Cleveland or Indianapolis or Pittsburgh fall. I mean, Miami's probably a team that if they can get a home field advantage throughout the AFC playoffs, they could probably do something. But if they have to go on the road to Kansas City or Baltimore, I don't necessarily know that they're going to win a game in January. I just don't know. They need to be home. They need to be where the good warm weather is. This week they're on the road at Washington. That should be a win for them. They should get to 9-3. And then, you take a look at their last 5 games. I think 4 of their last 5 are at home, which means that there's a very good chance that they may be able to get the 1st or 2nd seed.
Yeah, I know we talk so much about parity, though, in the NFL and how anybody can do it and look at this team here and you can go into the season and you don't know what's going to happen. And then in the end, when it shakes out, those same teams are there again.
Well, the real frustrating team for me anyway is Buffalo. Buffalo, when Josh Allen plays like he's played the last 2 weeks, now he had to play, I think, one of his best games of his career this past week in Philadelphia simply because he is pissed off. He's got a chip on his shoulder, and he's trying to make a statement, and I appreciate that. And that's, you can't take anything away from what he has done the last 2 weeks. He has played at a really, really high level, and I don't, can he continue it? And they have a tough schedule going forward. Interesting, though, you talk about the league and how frustrating it is and how we all sit around waiting for a flag at the end of the game, whether it's illegal contact, defensive holding, or pass interference. So, interestingly enough, this past Sunday, we had the doubleheader on CBS. And in our late window, of course, we had Philadelphia-Buffalo, and then we also had the other game, Kansas City and the Raiders. The rating, get this, the rating for that 425 game was a 14.2, which means that almost 29 people viewed Sunday's
29 million, right?
29 million people. I'm sorry, 29 million people viewed Sunday's telecast, and it's the best Sunday window since Brady Rogers in 2014, where 30.9 million viewers watched it. Even the regional games, which are our 1 o'clock games on CBS, scored an 8.2 rating with the Pittsburgh-Cincinnati most watched regional since 2021. And those are great numbers for CBS. It's great numbers for us. But that Pittsburgh-Cincinnati game would have been so much more enticing had Joe Burrow been playing.
Oh, well, of course. I mean, and you've got major names going down that have been out for an extended period of time that really, really hurts the product. And I'm not surprised that the ratings are like that because I am example A. I'm sitting here complaining about the product, how bad it has been. I can't remember watching football and being this frustrated for this long, and I'm not missing any of it. And quite frankly, even if I wasn't sitting here next to you talking about it every week, I'd still be watching it because I don't want to miss anything.
Well, I know.
And I enjoy it, and I like putting money on the games. I like watching and the camaraderie and everything. I don't know what I would do without it.
I know.
So this is why it makes it extra frustrating for me because I know I'm never going to stop watching. But the product certainly has suffered this year. And I don't know what the answer is, really, because... Yeah, I mean, think about it. Kirk Cousins, he was a non-contact injury. Daniel Jones was a non-contact injury. So it's not even so much of the violence of the game, but you've also got Thursday night football now being such a thing.
We're still not
17-game season being a thing.
Right, yeah, we're still not sure how Joe Burrow got hurt.
Well, that's true.
We don't know if he got hurt in the game or he got hurt before the game and then got re-injured in the game. We're still not sure about that. But, yeah, there's a lack of practice also.
Yeah.
A lot of teams take the pads off during the week late in the season. They don't hit nearly as much. They don't hit in preseason. The NFLPA has basically demanded more days off, so players have gotten more days off. And, this is a game. It's not 5 guys on an ice. It's not 5 guys on a hardwood. It's 11 guys, and there's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of stress, and there's incredible athletes, all over the field. And to me, the defense is winning. Right now, the defense is winning, even though the rules are set up for the offense to have more success. But when you watch this game last night, I mean,
it's horrible.
It is horrible. And then you go back and watch some of the tape of like what the Jets were doing on offense and how their offensive line is just a complete mash unit, and they're all on different levels. I mean, it's, like when you watch Philadelphia, Detroit, San Francisco, Miami, these teams that are good and are relatively healthy on the offensive line, and you watch their offensive linemen, and they're all in sync with one another. The best years I had is when I had one of the best lines in Cincinnati, and they all stayed healthy for about 5 straight years. And all the same 5 guys were out there with me, and they were like the Rockettes. They were in sync with one another. So I just think we do have a lot of mediocre football. Tom talks about coaching and things of that nature. I mean, first of all, the players coming out of college are ill prepared to play in the NFL. Yeah, there are probably about 10 or 20 that when they first get there, they figure it out. They're really good, and their ability is so good that they can play well, they can be effective without having the experience. But the far majority of the young guys that are coming in, especially the quarterbacks coming in, they don't have any development time. They're coming from spread offenses. They're very rarely under the center. They don't have to read as many defenses in college as they have to do in the pros. And it's really a struggle. I mean, I went back and just watched part of the Bengals game tape yesterday. I was just watching to see what Jake Browning was doing. Jake Browning played like 53 or 54 games at the University of Washington. He was a really good player. He was, I think, Pac-12 Player of the Year one of those years. And you watch him drop back, and there are guys running wide open, but he doesn't see him because it's happening so fast. And he's not sure what he is seeing. And if you remember, Sam Darnold said against the New England Patriots on ESPN, I'm seeing ghosts. And that's what happens to young players at our position. You think that there's like 15 guys out on the field because things are happening so fast and things are moving. And it's unlike practice where you're standing there and you don't have to worry about getting hit or throwing an interception and it's going to ruin the game. So I think the game is severely hindered because of the lack of top quality quarterback play that we've lost due to injury.
Yeah, but I mean, there's guys that are just flat out bad that are starting for teams as well, and those are some of the worst teams in football, obviously. And then
why are they starting? Give me an example.
Well, okay. Here's an example. How about rookies that shouldn't be playing? Now you got one in C.J. Stroud, who is great.
Yep.
You got Bryce Young, who has been miserable. You had Anthony Richardson, who probably shouldn't have been out there and got himself hurt right away. So that is one example right there. Obviously, there's the injuries and the backups that you have bad quarterback play. But, I mean, this is this vicious cycle that goes on because nobody has any patience. And you got owners like David Tepper who are firing coaches in back-to-back years before the season is over. I mean, if I'm Bryce Young, I'm like, holy hell. I mean, they may trade back up into the first round and take another quarterback next year because this guy is so nuts. So,
well, the interesting thing there, I do have some knowledge there. I don't have enough knowledge to say exactly what was going on there. But I do know that if Andy Dalton plays, they probably have 3 or 4 wins. But they wanted to play the young kid. And, the coaches know, Frank knows whether the kid is ready or not, but they keep trotting him out there because he's a first overall pick and you have to trot him out there. And I don't know, and I understand in the world of the salary cap and how things are different and how players are looked differently and the expectations are a lot higher. But, that kid is not ready. He looks like a little kid on the field. He's just not ready.
Yeah.
And that's okay. You just let him sit and let Andy Dalton play the first 8 games of the year. If you're not in playoff contention, which they probably wouldn't have been, but then you could bring in Bryce Young after he has now sat and watched 8 games. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, for God's sake, Patrick Mahomes, of all people, sat for the first 15 games into the season.
Yeah, and who knows if he would have been as good right away if that didn't happen. He might have been because he's one of the best we've ever seen, but that probably was a huge positive for him to hit the ground running. And there's just pressure from these fan bases, too. And I understand guys like David Tepper are hearing that. Like, you're really going to trot out Andy Dalton? I mean, we want to see this kid. We want to see if he's great. And then coupled with the fact that C.J. Stroud's playing as well as he is, I mean, that pressure just mounts and mounts and mounts because nobody can be bad anymore. I mean, nobody is allowed to be bad anymore in the NFL without serious consequences every single year. I mean, it's almost as if everybody goes into the season expecting to make the playoffs, where there's some teams that just aren't there yet.
Interesting. Adam Schefter told, Pat McAfee he expects a bloodbath when it comes to the coaches. We've already had 2 coaches fired in season.
That's right.
Josh McDaniels and, of course, Frank. And then, who knows who else is
Matt Eberflus is going to go.
Well, I mean, I don't know, and I don't like really talking about it. I mean, we all could look at every single team and we could say this team's going to go in a different direction. This for different reasons.
Yeah.
It's for different reasons. Like the Washington Commanders have a new ownership group. They want a new stadium.
Yeah,
they want new excitement around the team. I was talking to James Brown on CBS. He's down there tied into the Washington, sports scene and everything. And they want a new stadium. And they want a new stadium right where RFK is. And RFK is basically built on federal land. And D.C. wants it. The federal government wants it. And, Josh Harris and the new owners want it. That's where they want it. And, that they're going to try to get it in order to get, things moving in the right direction, perception, positivity, all of those different things. You got to hire the right people. You got to make sure you have the right connections. And, they want to keep the Washington Commanders in Washington. And that would be the smartest thing for them to do, and to put a dome on that stadium. That's what they should do. And I think that's what they're expecting to do. And in order to do that, you got to kind of, and I hate to say this because I love Ron Rivera just as much as I love Frank. I think they're guys that have, fought the battles in the NFL as assistant coaches, ascended to head coaches, had some success. And then unfortunately it comes to an end, just like maybe Bill Belichick up in New England.
Right, and where he goes and what happens with him is going to be a huge offseason storyline.
Thanks so much for watching the video.
Please like and subscribe.
And don't forget to hit the bell so you're notified when we're dropping new content.